G'day folks, Tim Armstrong, Think Fishing. Thanks for joining me again today. Today I've got a really good one for you, the Ned Rig, the tiny American lure that works ridiculously well on Australian fish. So this tiny lure has been absolutely dominating the bass fishing tournaments in the United States for years, for decades in fact. It's been working well in Japan. It's very popular in Europe and particularly in the UK for redfin perch. But hardly anyone's using it in Australia. It looks almost too simple to work. It's small, it's subtle, it doesn't look very exciting, it doesn't rattle or wobble violently from side to side when you retrieve it, it's got no rotating blades. But here's the thing, this rig absolutely cleans up on Australian fish. Bass, golden perch, redfin, bream, etc. When the bite is really tough and nothing else is working, this is what I turn to. This is what works best. So by the end of this video, you'll know what the Ned Rig actually is, why it works so well, and how to fish it properly in Australian waters. So what is a Ned Rig? Well, let's start simple because it's a very simple rig, basically. Tiny jig head. This one is less than 1/4 of an ounce. It's about 1/8 of an ounce, I believe. It's got a very short, soft, buoyant lure on the end of it, and you can see that that thing's got plenty of movement. Even the slightest bit of movement in the water or the shaking of your line will cause that thing to move very subtly. Generally, so yeah, as I said, small jig head, small soft plastic, fished hard on the bottom slowly. So that's it. No fancy action, no aggressive hopping, no burning it back to the boat. In fact, it's designed just to sit on the bottom in an upright position with that tail floating up. And that detail, that standing up, is everything. So where did it come from? Well, basically, the Ned Rig comes from the Midwest of the United States, where anglers typically have to fish highly pressured lakes with clear water, finicky fish, and generally just all-round tough conditions. So it was designed by anglers who needed to catch fish when the cold front hits, the water temperature drops, and the fish shut down, or the fish you've seen every other lure in the shop, and you know they're just hard to catch. So in other words, exactly the same conditions we have here in Australia. So why does it work so well? Well, this is the most important part. Fish are generally energy efficient. And Australian fish are just like bass in the US. They're lazy. They don't want to chase a fast-moving prey over a long period of time or over a long distance if they don't have to, because they want to burn energy efficiently. They don't want to waste it chasing something down that's only got a few calories. So the Ned Rig basically looks like a small yabby, a shrimp, or a gudgeon feeding off the bottom, or even an aquatic insect. To a fish, it screams easy meal. Most lures rely on a reaction strike, caused by the invasion of their territory. So a lure swims past their face, it triggers that reaction bite because they're naturally aggressive, or the speed of the lure, something that's flying past your face so quickly, they've got to make an instant decision. Do I grab it or do I let it go and miss out on an easy meal? But if they're not particularly hungry or they're not particularly aggressive, that doesn't work. That's where the Ned Rig does though. So fish will simply move over towards it and then grab it, engulf it, open their mouth, inhale it. It's just part of a feeding response, not an aggressive response. So that's basically why, because they're tackling it so sedately, all you're going to feel is typically either a bit of a tick on your line might go slack when it shouldn't be, or you might feel just a little bit of extra weight on your line, sort of a mushy feeling. So the key is strike. Anything different, anything that feels out of place, strike. Strikes are free, but everyone that you don't strike is a fish that you don't catch. So you're not getting smacked. Fish are basically intercepting and feeding in a natural way. So hence the fact that you've just got to be so aware and conscious the whole time of what's going on. In terms of Australian fish, bass and estuary perch, love these things. Subtle, any sort of subtle bottom presentations, especially in post-spawn or in the middle of winter. And that's where Ned Rigs really shine on shut down fish that wouldn't otherwise sort of take a hard body or something a bit faster moving. Golden perch, okay, we all know golden perch will feed up near the surface. They'll feed in mid-water, particularly around standing timber, but they also feed frequently and actively on the bottom, because after all, that's where yabbies live. So they spend a lot of time hunting for yabbies on the bottom. That's where this works so well. And of course, they just love small, slow-moving, easy prey. Maori cod, particularly smaller Maori cod, they'll happily pick up a Ned Rig. Again, just that very, very subtle presentation when they're just not in the mood to chase down a fast-moving bait. Bream and flathead. So this is incredible around sand and rock edges. And basically, bream or flathead, if they eat yabbies, which they do, or gudgeon or whatever, shrimps, they'll eat the Ned Rig. So how do you fish this thing the right way? Well, here's where most people get it wrong. They move it either too fast or too far. The idea with this thing is that you just give it the slowest possible drag along the bottom, let it lift up, hold it there for a few seconds, maybe shake the slack in your line just to get a very, very gentle movement out of it. Dead stick it for a few seconds and then either hop it or drag it along a few inches. But when I say hop it, I mean 6 inches to a foot at the most. You just want it to look like a yabby that's been startled, or maybe a bait fish that's been startled. If you're fishing it in a river or a stream, it works equally well. Definitely use an extra wide gap weedless or snagless hook when you're fishing in a river, because otherwise you're bound to get snagged up. But I find the key is just to cast it out upstream, let it bounce along the bottom back towards you, and it looks just like a yabby that's been dislodged. So that works really, really well too. And again, you just let that lure sit, stand up, right, give it a shake when you need to, and that's about it. Less is definitely more. So we'll have a quick look at some of the different Ned Rig baits that are available, that are on the market, and then we'll get out on the water and I'll show you just how well it works. Okay, so here's a few of my favourite baits. So these are all Z-Man baits. They're readily available in Australia. This is the Craws, so that's a 2.5 inch yabby imitation. That works really, really well. And it's got plenty of movement too. You can imagine those claws jiggling around, vibrating with the smallest amount of movement from the water or from your line shaking. This is one that I use a lot as well. It catches a heap of fish. This is the traditional Ned Rig. So it's basically a 3 inch soft plastic worm. Again, very, very soft, and it moves really, really well in a little bit of current. And the typical jig heads that are available, this one here is the standard jig head, or the original. It's basically an exposed hook. I prefer not to use them because, as you probably know, I just want to be very careful around getting snagged up and getting weed on my line. I would much prefer to fish with something like this, which is the extra wide gap, or EWG hook. So you can fish that snagless, and it's really effective. Alternatively, you can also use this coloured lure heads as well, jig heads as well. They work really well in muddy water. And there's another type of weedless arrangement as well, which is a Ned Rig that's got this weed guard on it. So let's head out onto the water and just see how well this thing works. Let's swap now. You video the fish. Oh, shit, that's a monster. Look at that.
Pretty good, mate.
think of that. No, that's it. Right, I'll just quickly measure that.
Did you catch them on, Dad?
Ned Rig. I'll show you in a sec. Just put them in the water just for a sec. Just hit the top button. Okay, the Ned Rig. As a finesse rig, it requires very small movements. Just drag it across the bottom, just a couple of inches at a time. Just like a small bait fish scurrying around. Not bad. Let's try that again. Time. Let's go back for one more. Well, it's really starting to get cold out here, but it's not putting the fish off. I'm still happy to grab anything as long as it's dragged across the bottom. Oh, third cast, third fish. Oh. Too easy. So today we talked about the Ned Rig, what it is, how to fish it, what it catches. It doesn't look very impressive. It doesn't give you that thumping feedback that you'd normally get with a big hard body, but it makes perfect sense. It doesn't force fish to react. It lets them feed in their own natural way, and that's why it works so well, especially on Australian fish, especially when they're shut down and they're not taking anything else, and especially when it's particularly cold or there's been a cold front. So one thing to remember, get out and try it. You'll thank me for it. It catches a ton of fish. So hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.